Hello and welcome back to BSB Preview. It is October, as I remembered correctly in the last session, and we are previewing our November releases. Okay, so as you know, I need a half a minute to set up our Facebook Live, and I have an opening question for our lovely panel, Maggie Cummings, Radclyffe, Elle Spencer, and Sheri Lewis Whol, who is making a special appearance. That question is, what is your favorite writing snack? Okay, Maggie, take us away.
As I have been always very vocal about, I absolutely love chips. I'll eat any kind of potato chips there is. But when it comes to writing, my go-to snack is Hershey Kisses. I think I like them because I can trick myself into thinking that I'm just having a small amount because you have to individually open them, and they're sort of like, in designated size. And then it's just, daunting at the end when I just see the big pile of silver wrappers. So I definitely have no self-control when it comes to them. But that's my favorite writing snack. Toss it over to you, Rad.
My favorite writing snack when I'm editing, which is when I finally get to the computer, is popcorn. And I only eat half to 3/4 of the whole bag usually. Elle?
I love popcorn, and when I'm trying to keep it healthy, I do almonds and raisins. It's a healthier snack, but you still get that sweet, salty. So those are my two go-tos.
Okay, and for me, I'm like Rad. It's popcorn, but I like white cheddar popcorn, and I call it popcorn crack. And yeah, that's what I like.
All right, awesome. There you go. I know everybody's favorite writing snacks. Okay, as you know, this is a reading panel, and we have some lovely readings for you. As with all things in life, Radclyffe likes to be first. So she is going to read from us first from her November release, Treacherous Seas. Please introduce yourself, Rad, because I'm sure there are many people here who do not know you. And start reading whenever you like. Everyone else, if you could please mute yourselves, because I'm going to go to speaker view so people can see Rad.
Okay, hi, I'm Radclyffe. I write romances of all sorts, contemporary, romantic intrigue, some paranormal. I write a number of series, and I'm going to be reading tonight from one of those series, which I have not written in this series for something like 6 years or maybe 8 years, and that's the Provincetown Tales. The first, and I'm going to make this really short, I swear, Elle, I'm not going to go over time. I wrote the first book in this series in 1984, but it wasn't published until the early 2000s, and that is Safe Harbor. And this one is Treacherous Seas, and I'm going to be reading a scene that takes place in the clinic with Tori King, who is one of the primary characters in the series, along with her partner, Reese Conlon. You'll meet Laurel Winter, who is a new character in this edition, in this book, and they'll be talking about the other romantic interest, Andy Champlain, who is a young cop who works with Reese. So we're in the clinic. Tori pulled over one of the visitors' chairs, plopped her feet in it, and leaning back in her desk chair, closed her eyes. She might have drifted a little and was only mildly startled when Reese spoke from the door. "Are you asleep?" Tori turned her head and smiled. "Oh no, just taking a break." Reese came in, pulled the other visitor's chair over, and transferred Tori's feet to her lap. She slipped off Tori's shoes and began massaging her feet. Tori groaned. "Oh my God, that's as close to heaven as I think I'll ever get." Laughing, Reese said, "I can think of a couple of other ways to get you there." "Oh, believe me," Tori said, "I haven't forgotten." Working carefully around Tori's scar and the tight muscles in her lower leg, Reese said casually, "So I thought you were on desk duty." "I am," Tori protested, "most of the time. I haven't been doing anything strenuous. I just saw a couple of people with colds." She frowned. "Nasty ones, too. High fevers and coughs. I'd hoped we were past the flu season before tourist season started, but apparently not." "And nobody else could see them?" Reese said. "We're pretty slammed." "I hear you," Reese said. "So, is this a social call?" Tori redirected. Reese would worry if she was sitting home on the sofa, and she did the best she could not to add to Reese's concerns. However, sitting home wasn't all that good for her, and she wasn't doing anything strenuous by evaluating a few routine primary care cases. "Do I need an excuse to visit my wife?" Reese asked. Not if you're going to massage my feet every time you show up. Baby, Reese murmured, I'll massage anything you want. I'm well aware of that, and most appreciative. Tori wiggled her toes. But I happen to know that you're as busy as I am, so, Reese said, working her way up to Tori's calves. This is mostly a social call, mostly. I just wanted to see you. Are you doing all right? I have to tell you, I am beyond done with needing to pee every hour, sausage toes that won't fit in my shoes, and waddling around at about half a mile per hour. But other than that, being pregnant and all, I'm fine. So, status quo, Reese said. Exactly. Tori brushed the top of Reese's hand just to touch her, a simple pleasure she never tired of. What's the other part of your visit? Andy Champlain, Reese said. Tori said. Are you trying to exert undue influence on our recommendation based on our personal relationship? Oh, no, not exactly, Reese said. Maybe a little. How bad is she? Laurel was supposed to send you a report. And she did, Reese said, clear and concise and maybe conservative. You are trying to exert undue influence, and we're skirting close to confidentiality limits here. Andy said I could talk to you, Reese said, but I'm not here to change your recommendation. But Andy's desperate about wanting to get back to work, and I know where she's coming from. I'd feel the same in her shoes. Tori nodded, and you understand that we can't make an assessment based on the patient's desires. Completely. She wants to come back for an early reeval. Will you be okay with that? I didn't see her myself, Tori said. Hold on a minute. Tori called the front desk and asked their office manager, can you find Laurel and ask her to come back to my office? Sure, he said. 2 minutes later, Laurel Winter appeared. You need me, Tori? Come on in, Tori said. You know Reese. Yes, of course, Laurel said. Hello, Chief. Tell the chief why you think Andy Champlain can't go back to work right away. Laurel looked startled. I'm sorry, did my report to the station not go through? It did, Reese said. I was just wondering, not complaining, if maybe the recommended time off was a little conservative. Laurel glanced at Tori. I am not really comfortable discussing a patient without their consent. I agree, Tori said, and I don't want you to reveal any confidences. How about we approach it this way, since Reese already has some of the information in your report? Do you think Officer Champlain is a high risk for complication? Laurel sighed. Do I think? Not really, but I'm also not completely comfortable that she's not. I've only got part of the picture to work with. She stopped, as if parsing her next words. You know the subtle signs of a concussion are often symptoms, not something we can pick up on an exam. Reese looked from Laurel to Tori and back again. Andy says she feels fine. That's the problem, isn't it? She's not a reliable historian because she won't admit if she's got a problem. Tori smiled. You sound like a doctor now. Married to one, next best thing. Laurel said, we've got the physical exam and the x-rays, but I can't get any handle on how she's feeling, which means I can't trust some parts of my evaluation. I'm erring on the side of conservatism because, frankly, I have to. Will you see her sooner than you planned, Reese said. Of course, Laurel said, but I can't promise I'll change my mind. Wouldn't want you to. I want what's best for Handy. So do I, Laurel said. Thanks, Laurel, Tori said. Sorry to interrupt you. No problem. Reese said after Laurel left, I like her. Me too, Tori said. She's got a lot of confidence for someone just out of training, and she's right. Your officer didn't make it easy. Would it help if I talked to her? You might tell her that doctors are a lot like cops. We're pretty good at telling when people are dissembling. No kidding. Reese slipped Tori's shoes on. Better? Tori sighed contentedly. Much. You think we can make that a regular date? Absolutely. Reese gently set Tori's feet back in the chair, leaned over and kissed her. See you later, and don't work too hard. Hey, Reese, Tori said as Reese headed for the door. Reese turned. I love you. I know. And that makes my day every day. Thank you.
Aw, that's so sweet. Gotta love some Reese and Tori. Was it hard to write that book this year, not being able to make it to PTO?
In a way, I liked writing it because it made me feel closer to the place, and I've always loved it, and it's always been an inspiration for me. So no, in fact, it was kind of nice to be able to do it this year. I had decided right before everything kind of went to hell, early in March, that I was going to write another Provincetown Tale. And I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to write, and then I altered the plot a little bit, which becomes apparent when you read the book. So no, in fact, I'm glad that I wrote it this year. I feel really good about that.
Cool. All right. Any takers for going after Radclyffe? Anybody? Anybody? No? Okay. Sheri, you're up. Everyone else, please mute yourselves so that just Sheri will show.
Hi, I'm Sheri Lewis Whol, and I write paranormal. So if there's witches and vampires and werewolves and psychics and anything that goes bump in the night, that's my cup of tea. So the latest book coming out, if you can see it, is Avenging Avery. And you wouldn't think that a 300-year-old vampire and a deputy sheriff would have much in common. But come to find out, they have a common goal. And so they end up teaming up together to see if they can stop a secret society and a very, very evil vampire. So the scene I'm going to read for you today is when Jenny, the deputy sheriff, first comes face to face with Issa, the vampire, and there's been a murder. And Jenny is the one who knows that it was a vampire murder. So here's their first meeting. Now she stood stone still as she stared straight ahead into the night, illuminated by a bright golden moon. A light breeze blew her hair against her face while she tried to make sense of this situation. No way should anyone else be here. The crews had cleaned out hours ago, and for anyone who could see it now, nothing evil happened in this lush field, where the deer trampled down trails and the wind made the wild grass sway. Unlike Jenny, she didn't hold a flashlight. So why did a woman stand right on the spot where the body had been dropped, lifeless and drained earlier, staring down at the ground as if she could see it all? What in the actual... Who are you, and what are you doing? She stuck the flashlight in her pocket, pulled her gun, and pointed it at the woman's back as she walked close enough to see her long, dark hair. The moon's light was enough to make out the color, not enough to see if the woman might be armed. Her cop voice didn't prompt the woman to turn and face her. That lack of reaction made this encounter unusual. People typically responded in a different way when she barked at him. Instead, this woman turned slowly, without any sense of urgency or surprise that another person approached a murder site. When she finally faced Jenny, her finger tightened on the trigger while her pulse took off racing. I'm here for the same reason you are. Oh, no, I doubt that. Bile rose in Jenny's throat, and it took a lot of effort not to pull the trigger. She didn't, because even if she emptied the clip, it wouldn't do any good. The fact that she still pointed the gun at the woman's chest was ridiculous. A false sense of control, yet she didn't lower it. Control, even if it was an illusion, was better than nothing. Oh, I very much am. Hearing the woman's insolent tone, fury raced through her like a fire fed by 5 gallons of gasoline. She didn't fully appreciate who she faced. You're one of them, and I know exactly what you are. She tilted her head and studied Jenny. The intense gaze made her uncomfortable for good reason. In other circumstances, the woman looking at her now might be described as beautiful, with her long black hair, dark eyes, and smooth skin. She didn't appear to be more than 25, though the knowledge Jenny amassed over the last 10 years told her that the facade hid a frightening truth. I believe you do. Oh, she hated the cool, unhurried tone. Damn right I do. What are you doing here, and why did you kill that woman? How she wished she'd brought her other gun loaded with the special bullets. The cost of the oversight could very well be her life. Why had she thought coming here would be any different? These monsters were everywhere, almost like they were following her. Taking Avery hadn't been enough. They wanted to make her life a living nightmare as well. I killed no one. The calm way she spoke made Jenny even more agitated. Bitch didn't realize the extent of Jenny's insider knowledge. I know what I saw. I know what you did. That woman died at the hands of a vampire. She gave Jenny a slight nod. Ah, you do know of us. Oh, she wanted to pull that trigger in the worst way, even as ineffectual as it might be. More than you can imagine. Then lower your gun. It will do nothing, and I won't hurt you. You have my word. She put a delicate hand over her chest. Whether she spoke the truth remained to be seen. At the same time, Jenny suddenly saw the foolishness of her position. Vampires didn't die from a bullet wound. While it might slow them down, it wouldn't end their existence. At least with traditional bullets. The very special variety she kept loaded in another gun back at her house was a different story. She lowered her arm, slipped the gun back into the holster, her hand trembling. Stupid to keep it holding it out there like it could actually threaten this monster. Why did you kill her? At least if she were to die here, she wanted the truth before she did. Again, the woman shook her head. I swear I didn't. Right. I know who did. Are you telling me you're not the only one here? The thought made her both sick and thrilled her. When she'd relocated, she told herself it was all about moving on, to get past what had happened to Avery and begin living again. A good lie that she'd believed until right this second. Truth slapped her as hard as running face first into a brick wall. She hadn't moved on, and she hadn't stopped tracking the monsters who'd taken Avery away from her. The hunt had only stalled, not stopped. In her mind, she wanted to wipe vampires out of existence, and while her goal might be unrealistic, it gave her purpose and drive. Everyone had their own way of dealing with loss and grief. She itched to run home and grab the weapons made for just this kind of encounter. She didn't move. Curiosity pushed aside her anger and kept her face to face with a creature she very much wanted to destroy. In a weird way, she found herself intrigued. Her previous encounters with vampires had gone in a decidedly different direction. Shoot first, ask questions later. This time, she wanted answers. The woman tilted her head and stared. I am most assuredly not. Well, that sucked. Hadn't come in search of vampires, which was not to say she hadn't arrived at her new home prepared nonetheless. It was a little like being a cop and always carrying her gun. Vampire hunting and law enforcement were a lot alike, just different bullets. You know who they are? She nodded, and the silky hair swayed into her fair skin. One in particular. I have been stalking him quite a long time. Why is he here of all places? She smiled and brushed the hair off her face. The dark eyes grew hard. Because of me.
Oh man, there's a conflict if I ever saw one. That's awesome. I just have to say, I hate it when you're arguing with someone and you're so mad and they're like so cool and calm and relaxed. I really felt that. So that was awesome.
Yeah, she was kind of pushing Jenny's buttons.
Yeah, seriously. All right, I think I have worked out the screen share now. So I'm going to screen share a reading from Annie McDonald, who unfortunately cannot be here.
Hi, I'm Annie McDonald, and I write contemporary romantic fiction. I'm really sorry I can't be with you live today because I love fielding your questions, but feel free to reach out to me through the author page on the Bold Strokes Books website, and I'll be sure to reply. When Sparks Fly is my second book, and it is hot off the press. As this reading begins, Luca McCaffrey is set off alone in a snowstorm to find her young charge, Ziggy. She has reason to believe that Ziggy has ventured off by snowmobile to Luca's remote cabin. She's hopeful she'll be back in time for her first real date with Dr. Danny Waveney. But as she makes her cut off through the blinding snow, her hopes are terribly dashed. In spite of the fact that Luca's truck was otherwise dead, the windshield wipers were still flipping back and forth, pushing the gathering of snow on the driver's side down into her field of vision until the wiper returned. If she hadn't already guessed by the angle that the rearview mirror hung, tethered by a thin wire, it seemed clear that the truck had missed the driveway and landed in the ditch like a beached ship heavy on the port side. Blood dripped onto the deployed airbag, and for a split second, Luca wondered where it had come from. She traced it to a tender spot above her right eyebrow. Yep, it's mine. She ripped open a pink plastic-wrapped envelope she found in the armrest, unfolded the napkin, and stuck it to her forehead. The contents of her coach's bag were scattered around the cab, and she spotted a roll of hockey tape within reach. She strained against the seatbelt, pushed against the deflating sack, and hooked the tape with a finger before pulling it toward her. She tore 2 small pieces off the roll and used them to secure the sanitary napkin against her open wound. Ingenious. But her self-congratulatory mood pivoted as she realized she needed to do a lot more than stop her head from bleeding. First, there was the matter of the truck. It was possible for her to exit from the driver's side window, but there was no way she was going to free the truck from the ditch she'd slid into. Second, she was beginning to feel cold. Shelter should be her first priority. Getting help was essential, but her phone was nowhere to be seen. She suspected it had flown around in the cab with the rest of her gear and landed who knew where. She tried asking Siri for a response, but was met with silence. Her main concern was still for Ziggy. Luca couldn't see the cabin lights through the trees, no visible tracks, nothing. She needed to go there. At the very least, her home away from home would protect her from the wind and keep her dry. The climb out of the window required a bit of effort, given the angle, and attempting to right herself in snow up to her armpits stole most of her waning energy. She was forced to use swim-like strokes to get up to the driveway. By the time she slogged the remaining 100 or so yards to the cabin, she was sweating beneath her jacket. She pushed through a waist-high drift to access the side door, turned the knob, and found herself standing in the kitchen. No Ziggy. Damn. She felt a sudden pang of nausea and turned toward the sink in time to retch out the contents of her stomach. Double damn. Concussion. The feeling was too familiar. She felt the pad on her forehead for wetness, but it was still dry. She moved to the couch, reasoning she'd feel better after a little rest. So cold. She pulled all the blankets within reach on top, then tucked herself deeply into the sofa cushions. Just a little rest, then she'd be warm again. So at this point, Luca's friends have begun their search for her. Danny has just dropped fellow searcher Craig off at the trailhead. While he's going to check the back trails leading from town toward Luca's cabin by snowmobile, Danny continues in his truck, eventually finds Luca's ditched vehicle, and follows her trail to the cabin. As Danny entered Luca's cabin, every olfactory neuron in her brain began to fire. Vomit was her kryptonite. Some doctor. As hard as she'd tried, she'd never grown accustomed to its unmistakable stench. It usually caused at least a few involuntary contractions of her diaphragm, until this moment. She ignored the smell coming from the sink, held her phone flashlight straight ahead of her, and panned the main room. A sofa sat facing a large iron wood stove. Clumps of snow marked a path to the stove, then disappeared behind a coffee table. A small, shadowy movement near the arm of the couch caught her eye. "Luca," she called, rushing toward it. "Shh, people in here are trying to sleep." She was almost invisible within layers of well-worn quilts and a sleeping bag, and if it weren't for the inverted panty liner taped to her forehead, she might have been difficult to see, but there she was. "Thank God," Danny whispered, and immediately began assessment. Vomit and fatigue, combined with known head injury and history of same, likely concussion. She removed her gloves and felt beneath the covers around Luca's neck and shoulders, resting on the carotid artery for a moment. Pulse weak. "You know, this is the furthest anyone has ever gone to stand me up," she said, moving her cold hands down the back of Luca's parka. There was no reaction to her comment, and Luca was not shivering. Neither were a good sign. Shivering was a result of the body trying to warm itself, and Luca's lack of that necessary survival response was likely indicative of a progressing hypothermia. Danny continued her assessment. She felt dampness around Luca's sweater and cursed beneath her breath. Sweat and melted snow would quickly lower body temperature. "Too bad, because I was taking you to dinner at a place on the Esplanade Real Bridge," Danny spoke matter-of-factly, her medical training superseding her escalating fear. She moved her hands to Luca's face and gently lifted the edges of the makeshift bandage. Luca's eyes widened. The blue had faded. The pupils were uneven and only barely responsive to light. "My dad built that bridge," Luca slurred. Danny didn't know if the statement was delusionary or not, but she was happy Luca was engaging. It was important to keep her active in her own survival. Luca, do you think you can get up? No, she yelled. The kids. We need to wait for... We need to... Her words trailed off. Danny's concern remounted. The sudden irritability was a sign that the cold was compromising Luca's body's ability to regulate its internal temperature. Luca needed warmth, and without Craig's help, Danny doubted she'd be able to get her to the truck. She pushed the blankets back, unzipped her own coat and fleece liner, and pressed her body alongside Luca's, drawing the blankets over them both. Luca sighed and snuggled closer as Danny drew her in tightly. Luca, I need you to stay with me, all right? Don't go to sleep. Craig will be here soon, and we're going to get you warm. No response. Do something. Warning bells sounded in her head. Danny determined a new plan of action. Can you walk, Luca? We're going to try to get to the road, okay? Without waiting for an answer and abandoning hope that Craig would arrive soon enough, Danny stood and, using the blankets as a sling, she pulled Luca to her feet. Are you taking me back to Guyana with you? I don't want to go. Luca resisted and leaned into the blanket sling, but Danny was prepared and pulled against her. Just as quickly, Luca relented and began shuffling in the direction of the door. It would be so warm there, right? She murmured. Just a few steps away, red and white lights appeared through the kitchen window. Seconds later, Craig bounded inside and folded Luca and the blankets into his arms, lifted them easily, and headed outside. It was only as Danny pulled the door closed behind them that she realized Craig had forced the truck through the heavy snow, down the driveway, in reverse, all the way to the cabin. He must have read the surprised look on her face. I saw the blood, Doc, and the trail in the snow. I'd have gotten here no matter what. Once Luca was tucked into the back seat, Danny climbed in and lifted her head onto her lap. Is she okay, Doc? Craig asked, slipping behind the wheel. A frantic tone edged in on his usually deep voice. He was scared for Luca. Hospital, please, Craig. It's a good thing that we found her when we did. Her chances are better because of it, and I know it won't take long for you to get us to town. Do you have a first aid kit in the cab? It's in the bin under the passenger seat. It has a few gel warmers and one of those shiny blankets. Perfect, she said gently. The hand warmers would introduce warmth at a slow enough rate that they wouldn't induce shock. Working quickly beneath the blankets, she stripped off Luca's wet clothes down to her underwear. She ripped open the warmers, placing them strategically under Luca's armpits, on her chest, and against her neck. Then she covered her with the silver blanket to reflect any body heat expedited by the hand warmers back to her core, before laying the blankets and her own coats on top. What the hell was she thinking going out there alone? Craig grumbled. She knows the weather here in February turns on a dime. Danny looked at Craig's face in the rearview mirror, wishing she could take away his worry and hoping he couldn't see hers. Then she did a quick inventory of the mess that was Luca's face. Sanitary napkin held in place by hockey tape, the blue and purple edges of what would be a considerable bruise on her forehead, the legacy chin scar, and numerous smears of fresh blood. In spite of the damage, she looked so beautiful that Danny began to tear up. She's going to be okay. She has to be. Thank you all.
Awesome. I was totally going to make a joke about lesbians stranded together in a snow-covered cabin, but Luca is so sick that I don't think even I can make that joke, unfortunately. I hope she's okay. Let's all hope for Luca, and hopefully they can make it back to that cabin when everybody is feeling better. Alrighty. Are Maggie and Elle, are you guys going to fight for who goes next?
Either way.
Either way is fine with me.
All right, Maggie, you're up. Please tell us a little bit about your book and start reading whenever you like.
Sure. I'm going to be reading from Bulletproof, which is my November release. Bulletproof is a romance wrapped in a narcotics investigation. The main characters are Detective Dylan Prescott and Brianna Logan, who is the prosecutor on the case. Together, they're working on investigating an opioid ring. And because Dylan and Brianna are both career-minded, professional women, they agree to not act on their attraction and feelings to one another, which is great in theory. Of course, as the investigation heats up, this becomes harder and harder. And complicating matters is the fact that Dylan, who's the detective, as part of her role in the investigation, she has to act in an undercover capacity to try to infiltrate the narcotics ring. And she does this on like a semi-routine basis. And how it works is that she partners up with another female detective on their team, and they pose as a couple while they frequent the bar of the main target of the investigation has sort of designated as kind of like a headquarters for his drug ring. Of course, the bar is equipped with covert surveillance, and so the entire investigative team can be back in the main headquarters and watch and that includes, of course, the prosecutor, Brianna, can watch these operations as they play out. And that's what I'm going to be reading right now. Brianna could see everything from her spot in the center of the wire room, her eyes glued to the 60-inch monitor feeding the details of the undercover operation. Whether or not her heart or blood pressure could withstand the visual of Dylan with Trish talking to bona fide drug dealers, well, that was a different story altogether. Hey, why don't you sit, Brianna? Ahmed, one of the detectives, wheeled over a chair for her. Oh, no, thank you, Ahmed. I'm fine. Brianna waved him off. She couldn't even think about sitting. She needed to be able to stand and shuffle and fidget just to work through some of her anxiety. Here they come, Lieutenant Nieves called everyone to attention. The room fell silent as they all watched Dylan and Trish enter the bar. Brianna tried not to focus on their joined hands or the way Dylan pulled out his stool for Trish to sit down. Dylan stood next to her, and Brianna knew it was because standing made her feel more in control of the situation. She could do without Trish caressing the small of Dylan's back, though. She took a deep breath. It's just work, block it out, she reminded herself. Just then, Paul, the main target, approached them, and they all hugged hello like they were old friends. Why can't I hear them? Brianna asked out loud. Hang on a second. Ahmed threw on a headset and sat at the computer controlling the surveillance equipment. We're getting it. It's recording, he said. There seems to be a problem with the audio feed to the monitor. He pointed at the big screen. But it is coming through. Looks to be about a half minute behind. I guess I could mess around with it to see if we could hear it through the speakers, but I'm afraid we'd lose it altogether. Don't do it, Lieutenant Nieves ordered from his perch in the back. Ahmed, for now, you just listen and give us the play-by-play. You can work out the kinks later on. In a way, Brianna was happy not to hear the cutesy dialogue she was sure was being exchanged, and in Trisha's case, laid on way too thick. But absent sound, her mind filled in the blanks anyway. Hey, did you guys see that? Ahmed was animated. He pointed at the monitor and pulled one earmuff to the side. Did you guys see how Dylan just stretched her back? They all nodded. Paul must have thought it was bothering her, so he asked if she was okay. On the screen, Paul was signaling to his lackeys to join them from the end of the bar. Fucking Dylan, man. She went right with it, gave him this whole story about how she works for her uncle who's a contractor and she got hurt on a job. Ahmed was talking so fast it was almost hard to follow. Paul just asked if she was taking anything for the pain, and she said Motrin or something, and he just offered her a Percocet. Lieutenant Nieves jumped out of his chair. Are you serious? I'm telling you, boss. Look. Ahmed pointed at the screen. I know you can't hear it, but Paul wanted her to take it. She told him she just took a Motrin 800. Brianna sighed deep, feeling her chills all the way through her spine. Ahmed held both ears covered with the heavy-duty headset. His voice was loud as he continued to keep them updated. Okay. Paul told her to take it at home. She offered him cash, but he declined. Even though Brianna had complete faith in Dylan, she could feel herself starting to sweat. Paul's asking her details about the injury. Ahmed shook his head. Holy smokes, she is insanely good. Dylan does not miss a beat. Now they're talking about how great Trish is, to be there for her support, yada, yada. Brianna watched a soundless Dylan work the room, dividing her attention between Paul and the other guys, animated but reserved at the same time. Trish rubbed her back and dropped a kiss on her shoulder. Gross. But they were making real progress, and Brianna had to remind herself of the endgame. On screen, Dylan hung her head in laughter the way she did when Brianna flirted with her. Trish was hanging all over Dylan, and it made her stomach turn. Brianna almost looked away, and if she had, it probably would have been for the best. But it was like watching a train wreck. She simply couldn't tear her eyes away. And then Dylan did the unthinkable. She faced Trish, and oh my God, she kissed her. Yowza! Ahmed fanned himself. Well, that was definitely for show, but those guys ate it up. You should hear them talking about what a great couple they are. The action portrayed on the TV indicated that the conversation had changed, and only then did Brianna remember the audio lag. Here we go, Ahmed nodded. Paul just said if Dylan likes the Percocet, he can get her more. He told her to stay in touch. The detectives and Ahmed high-fived. Lieutenant Nieves fist-pumped, but Brianna's heart sank. She knew what had just happened was monumental for the investigation, but all she could see was Dylan kissing someone else. The end.
Oh no, well don't stop there.
You have to read. You have to buy the book to read to see what happens.
Now I'm so confused about who's falling in love with who's kissing who. There's video. I feel like this is 2020 gone wild. Thanks, Maggie. All right, Elle Spencer, lovely last.
I just have to say, I love Maggie's accent. It's awesome.
What accent? What are you talking about?
New York. I'm Elle Spencer, and I write contemporary romance, usually a little bit angsty with some humor. And my latest is The Holiday Treatment. And so the reading is, the main character, Holly Hudson, is a story editor by day and a screenwriter by night, and she works for a cable network channel, and she writes cheesy Christmas movies. So her desire on the actual holiday is to just have a quiet holiday alone, because she kind of lives Christmas all year long. So she is on her way to take that holiday for this reading. Okay. Holly stopped dead in her tracks. "Be cool," she whispered to herself. She turned around, oh so casually, hoping she wouldn't be spotted. "Don't be daft. She probably won't even remember you. And stop thinking words like daft. You're not British." Holly took a breath and peeked over her shoulder. Meredith Drake, aka Madam President, had moved through the crowd to the luggage carousel. Madam President was the nickname Holly had recently conferred upon her crush, resulting from a fantasy involving a certain desk in the Oval Office. How the hell had Holly been on the same flight to Honolulu with her and hadn't even known it? It seemed wholly unfair. It also seemed like her fantasy should have taken place on Air Force One. Meredith had probably been in first class, which explained why she looked so well rested. Her short brown hair lacked the typical flattening on the back of the head that usually happened on a long flight. It had a slight wave to it, no frizz, a pretty shine, and Holly was sure that if Meredith jumped up and down, her hair would have a natural, hairspray-free bounce to it, which meant it was being held in place with nothing but God's love. Of course it was. Holly lowered her gaze to Meredith's off-white linen pants, loose except for the part that hugged her backside perfectly. She wore a fitted navy blue t-shirt that made Holly pray she would turn around, and a gray cashmere scarf that had probably kept her cozy on the flight. Holly, on the other hand, felt like a hungover, crumpled piece of Kleenex due to the one too many glasses of wine she'd had the night before. She hadn't worn her nice track pants. Nope, not Holly. She was in sweatpants and a hooded sweatshirt that said Nantucket and had a drawing of a whale on it. To say she was a bit worse for wear would have been an understatement. It didn't help that she'd been stuck next to a guy who'd snored his way through the entire flight. No matter, she had a plan. She'd hold back and leave her luggage on the carousel until Meredith got hers and left. Then everything would be fine. She moved through the crowd but kept her eye on Meredith. She imagined any number of surveillance scenarios, going around the corner and secretly watching from a mirror, cutting two peepholes out of a newspaper, a drone, but that wasn't really viable inside the airport. Holly wasn't a creep. She was just prone to vivid daydreams. It had gotten her in trouble plenty growing up, but it had served her well in her professional life. She allowed herself a brief moment of glee thinking about that time Miss Winchell had told her she'd never amount to anything if she couldn't learn to cut out the daggum stargazing and just focus. She wondered if Miss Winchell was harassing any future screenwriters in this year's class. And that was when the worst black luggage disaster the Daniel K. Inouye International Airport had ever seen happened. Okay, so maybe it wasn't the worst. Sadly, it wasn't even a movie-worthy explosion of bras and panties. More like a steady spill as the zipper on Meredith's suitcase gave up on its only job in this world. Granted, the suitcase appeared to be stuffed beyond capacity. Meredith had managed to pull it off the carousel along with most of her clothing. Unfortunately, a set of light pink panties and a matching bra that still had the tags on had exceeded her reach and were about to be viewed by everyone on the flight. When a young boy was shushed by his mother after he shouted, "Look, Mommy, are those your panties?" Holly decided to make a run for it. She pushed her way through the throng of tired passengers who were crammed up against the carousel. "Excuse me, sorry, excuse me." With a lunge, she grabbed the bra and panties, managing to travel a few feet on the carousel for good measure. She pushed herself back up and threw her hand in the air. "Got them!" The strangers, apparently not appreciative of the athletic prowess she just demonstrated, stared at her. A teenager with major attitude gave her a slow clap. And to make things worse, her chivalrous gesture had gone unnoticed by Meredith. Holly quickly recognized the near miss for the blessing it was. While her instinct had been to play the panty-saving superhero, in reality, she looked like an ass standing there holding Meredith's lacy pink bra and panty set. Funny how many of her Meredith fantasies involved bra and panty sets, yet never quite like this. She turned back towards the luggage and watched as her bag disappeared onto the backside of the carousel. She'd have to wait there until it circled around again. "Excuse me?" A voice came from behind her. "I believe those belong to me." Holly cringed and delivered a silent prayer. "Sweet Jesus, please take me now. Please take me, please take me." Nothing. She felt compelled to clarify, "Jesus, please take me now." Nope. Holly would have to turn around and face Meredith Drake. She manufactured a smile and turned. "Well, howdy," she said with a bit too much enthusiasm and way too much howdy. The corners of Meredith's mouth curled up slightly. Her eyebrows arched. Then she grinned. "Holly Hudson, what a surprise."
Oh, that doesn't get any less funny. It also makes me miss traveling, which is really weird because I don't like traveling even when we're not in a pandemic, but I would really like to be picking up luggage from the airport right now. I feel like magic could happen. All right, we have a couple of minutes for questions, so let me look at my list. Okay, here's one for our authors. What do you hope that readers will remember about this book? If you could pick something that readers will walk away with, something that they are going to remember, what would it be? Maggie's thinking really hard, so let's start with her. You're on mute, Maggie, by the way.
Yeah, I was like, God, will anybody remember anything about this book, I wonder? Sometimes I don't remember anything about this book. It feels like ages ago because I finished it March 1st, I think. And I finished it really right on deadline. So I feel like it was before the world changed. I guess what I always hope people remember is things that I know it's sort of a cheesy answer, but things that struck chords with them, whether it's the connections that people make in terms of relationships, but there's also a lot of family stuff that happens here about, there's just family connections that are made, whether it's chosen family or given family, bonded family. So I hope that things, reach people and they make connections of similar things that have happened in their own lives, just in the relationships.
I like that. That's lovely. Rad, how about you? What do you hope readers will walk away with?
Oh, I have to echo what Maggie said a lot because all of my books, but particularly this one, are about community. So I hope that people take away the idea that together we can overcome almost anything. And depending on the people that we trust and the people that we love is probably the most important thing we can do when we're really challenged.
I love that. That's a perfect message for 2020. Elle, how about you? What do you hope that readers will remember about your book?
Well, Holly Hudson's main dream is to get a gay or lesbian holiday Christmas movie put on a network like Hallmark, Lifetime. In fact, the fictional network she works for in the book is Lifetime. So that's her goal in life, is to get more representation in those cheesy Christmas movies, because there really is none. And so I hope that when the people who have read this book and one day see that lesbian or gay Christmas movie, that they'll remember that someone had to push really hard to get it made. And that's what Holly's doing in this book. So yeah, that's what I want to remember.
That's awesome. She's not just a penny-saving superhero. That's great. And I think there are a lot of people who can, who have the same dream, I think, and would love to see that happen. So fingers crossed. Sheri, you're also on mute, by the way. Yep. What do you think? What do readers come away with from reading your book?
Well, I hope what they see in mine is that, you know, we have people that on the surface we look like we're completely different. We have nothing in common. And how could we possibly work together because we're so far apart? But that when we stop and get to know each other and look behind the facades, we find out that we often have more in common than we do those differences. And when we work together, we can make wonderful things happen. Now, granted, in my books, we got vampires and stuff, but still, I think the theory still holds. And that's what I hope they see, is that there is always more to the story than what you really see on the surface.
I love that. Lots of great messages. All right, I think we have time for one, maybe two more questions. You guys don't have to mute yourselves now that we're in a big group. All right, what is something that you have learned about yourself through your writing? Doesn't have to be this book, can be any book or just like a general lesson through your entire writing career. What's something that you discovered about yourself through writing? I'm going to pick on Sheri.
I discovered letting go of fear. That when I stopped worrying about what people were going to think about what I write, when I stopped worrying about whether they were going to consider me a serious writer, and I wrote what spoke to me, that I feel freedom, and it gives you a sense of empowerment. And so for me, that's probably one of the biggest lessons, was just letting go and being me.
Oh, I love that. And that's perfect for all of life too, not just writing. Maggie, how about you? What have you learned about yourself?
I have learned that writing scares me a lot, but it also makes me really happy. And those two things sort of like go hand in hand. It's sort of similar to what Sheri is saying, that like the fear isn't there alone. It's like that drive to push myself, and that the joy that I feel when I'm done, that I feel that I've accomplished something. And it's like, even if it's not well received or whatever the case is, or it doesn't sell well, it's something that I accomplished just kind of on my own. I put those words on paper, I dedicated the time, and as scary as it is, I did it. So I think that it's sort of like a self-motivator. And also, I mean, I'm also motivated largely by deadlines. So that's another thing that I learned, that if I don't put a date of when I will turn something in, I absolutely will not do it. So that's like, I mean, I guess sort of a couple of things that I've learned.
Well, it's good for me to know, motivated by deadlines. But I hear what you're saying, because writing is creating something from nothing, and it's all on you to do that. So I think there is a real sense of personal accomplishment. Elle, how about you? What have you learned about yourself through your writing?
Well, I'm definitely with Maggie. It's a lot of fear and a lot of joy, both, that come from writing. Fear of, you know, putting it out there and having it bomb, or you know, whatever. But the joy of knowing that someone out there enjoys what I'm writing, and that I'm giving a bit of representation to our community, that brings a lot of joy. And then, you know, I've also learned that I'm a procrastinator and not very organized. But that there's a lot of stories inside me, a lot of characters, and so trying to get them out.
That's great. Take the good with the bad. Rad, how about you? What have you learned?
I'm going to echo a little bit what everyone said, and I hope that I wish everyone who reads our books was listening to what everyone just said, because writing is deeply personal. And when you give it away, when you put it out there for other people to experience, it's very frightening because you're giving away a piece of yourself that in many instances you're afraid to give away. And what I've learned is that when you give something that you cherish that much away and someone out there finds something meaningful in it or cherishes it just a little bit back, it makes it all so much more gratifying. But it's really hard, the work that all these authors are doing. It's really hard from a very deep emotional place. And I think that we should all treat each other really kindly around everything that we share.
Oh, well, that is a lovely note to end on. I'm not even going to have a speed round because that just gives me all the feels. So we are unfortunately done for the night. Sorry, guys, but we will be back next month promoting our December releases. So please join us then. And thank you to all our amazing authors for this panel. I'm sure
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Sandy.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you, guys.